November 2nd, 1979. Three people walked into the Clinton Correctional Facility for women in New Jersey carrying fake IDs. The guards never checked them. They walked into the visitor room, pulled out concealed .45 caliber pistols and a stick of dynamite, took two guards hostage, grabbed Assata Shakur, commandeered a prison van, and drove straight out. The hostages were dropped off unharmed in a parking lot. Nobody got hurt. And the woman the FBI had spent 6 years trying to silence disappeared into the underground and was never seen in American custody again. State correction officials later admitted they had not run identity checks on Shakur's visitors. They had not searched them. The most wanted woman in America just walked out because nobody bothered to verify who was visiting her. The FBI staged a massive manhunt. They plastered wanted posters across New York and New Jersey. They never found her. She lived underground in Pittsburgh for 9 months, flew to the Bahamas in August 1980, and surfaced in Cuba 4 years later, where Fidel Castro granted her political asylum. She lived there openly for 41 years, teaching at universities, writing books, giving interviews, while America offered $2 million for her capture. She died in Havana on September 25, 2025, at age 78, still free. The bounty failed completely. This is the story of how one woman humiliated the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world and became hip-hop's revolutionary godmother. Her name was Joanne Deborah Byron when she was born in Queens, New York on July 16, 1947. She grew up between New York City and Wilmington, North Carolina, with her grandparents after her parents divorced in 1950. She ran away from home multiple times as a teenager. An aunt, who later became one of her lawyers, took her in. She changed her name to Assata Shakur in 1971. She said the name Joanne irked her nerves. She did not feel like a Joanne or a Negro or an American. She felt like an African woman. Her mind and heart had gone back to Africa, but her name was still stranded in Europe. She joined the Black Panther Party in the late 1960s while attending Borough of Manhattan Community College and City College of New York. When the Panther leadership was arrested in 1969 and the organization effectively collapsed, she joined the Black Liberation Army. The BLA was more militant. They believed in armed resistance against what they saw as a racist police state, and the FBI immediately targeted her. The FBI's COINTELPRO program created an operation called CHESROBI specifically to link Assata Shakur to virtually every Black Liberation Army action involving a woman from 1971 to 1973. COINTELPRO was the FBI counterintelligence program designed to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize political organizations the Bureau considered threats. They targeted the Black Panthers, Martin Luther King Jr., the American Indian Movement, anti-war activists, and anyone they deemed subversive. The tactics included perjury, witness harassment, fabrication of evidence, and spurious criminal prosecutions. From 1971 to 1973, police and FBI agents tried repeatedly to arrest Assata on various charges. Every single case was dropped for lack of evidence. The evidence was flimsy. The charges were baseless. An NPR analysis in 2013 found that authorities were actively seeking her out, trying to catch her doing something, anything. They were unsuccessful for years, until May 2, 1973. That night at 12:45 a.m., Assata was riding in a car on the New Jersey Turnpike with two other Black Liberation Army members, Zayd Malik Shakur and Sundiata Acoli. State troopers Werner Foerster and James Harper pulled them over. The official reason was a broken tail light. What happened next destroyed multiple lives and created a legend. A shootout erupted. When it was over, Trooper Werner Foerster was dead. Zayd Malik Shakur was dead, Trooper Harper was wounded, and Assata Shakur had been shot twice, once under her raised armpit and once in the back. This moment left a shock that would reverberate for decades. The bullet that hit her armpit severed her median nerve, instantly paralyzing her entire right arm. It shattered her clavicle and lodged in her chest so close to her heart that surgery to remove it was not feasible. Assata testified that Trooper Harper shot her while her hands were raised in compliance with his orders, then shot her in the back as she turned to avoid the bullets. She said she crawled into the back seat of the car, semi-conscious and bleeding, while the shooting continued. Sundiata drove the car 5 miles down the road and parked it. State troopers eventually dragged her onto the road. Trooper Harper testified that he saw Assata reach for a gun and that she was in a firing position when he shot her. He later recanted parts of this testimony. Here is what the forensic evidence showed. Fingerprint analysis examined every gun and every piece of ammunition found at the scene. Assata's fingerprints were not on any of them. Neutron activation analysis taken immediately after she arrived at the hospital showed no gunpowder residue on her hands. This effectively refuted the possibility that she had fired a gun. Both analyses were conducted by the New Jersey Crime Laboratory in Trenton and the FBI crime labs in Washington, D.C. Both were admitted into evidence. Dr. Arthur Turner Davidson, a neurosurgeon and associate professor of surgery at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, examined Assata's wounds and reviewed X-rays taken immediately after the shootout. He testified that the wounds in her upper arms, armpit, and chest, combined with the severed median nerve that instantly paralyzed her right arm, would only have been caused if both arms were raised. He stated that to sustain such injuries while crouching and firing a weapon, as Trooper Harper described, would be anatomically impossible. Dr. David Spain, a pathologist from Brookdale Community College, testified that her bullet scars and X-rays supported her claim that her arms were raised. He said there was no conceivable way the first bullet could have hit her clavicle if her arm was down. This medical testimony supported her account. A neurologist testified that the median nerve in her right arm was severed by the bullet, making her unable to pull a trigger even if she had wanted to. The judge cut off funds for any further expert defense testimony. Between 1973 and 1977, Assata was indicted 10 times in New York and New Jersey. She faced 7 different criminal trials. She was charged with 2 bank robberies, kidnapping a Brooklyn heroin dealer, attempted murder of 2 Queens police officers, and 8 other felonies related to the New Jersey Turnpike shootout. Of those 7 trials, 3 resulted in acquittals. 1 resulted in a hung jury. 1 resulted in a mistrial because she was pregnant. 3 indictments were dismissed without trial. The only conviction came from the New Jersey Turnpike case. The trial took place in Middlesex County, where 70% of potential jurors already believed she was guilty based on pretrial media coverage. The jury was all white. Her defense attorney, William Kunstler, called it a legalized lynching by a kangaroo court. In March 1977, she was convicted of first-degree murder of Werner Foerster and 7 other felonies. She was sentenced to life in prison, plus 26 to 33 years. While imprisoned, an international panel of 7 jurists toured U.S. prisons at the invitation of Assata's legal team. They filed a report with the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, concluding that the conditions of her solitary confinement were totally unbefitting any prisoner. Their investigation focused on alleged human rights abuses of political prisoners. They cited Shakur as one of the worst cases of such abuses and included her in a class of victims of FBI misconduct through COINTELPRO and other forms of illegal government conduct, who as political activists have been selectively targeted for provocation, false arrests, entrapment, fabrication of evidence, and spurious criminal prosecutions. Angela Davis declared Assata a political prisoner in October 1973 before the conviction. While in prison, Assata conceived a child. Her daughter Kakuya was born during the trial proceedings. The consideration of her pregnancy resulted in one mistrial. After conviction, Kakuya was raised by Assata's mother in New York. In early 1979, a group of Black Liberation Army members called the family began planning her escape. They financed it by stealing $105,000 from a Bamberger's department store in Paramus, New Jersey. On November 2, 1979, 3 Black Liberation Army members visited the prison. They presented fake identification. The guards did not check them. They were not searched. They walked into the visitor room, pulled weapons, took hostages, grabbed Assata, and drove out in a prison van. No one was injured. The guards were left in a parking lot. Assata Shakur, Tupac's stepfather, masterminded the escape. He was later named the 380th addition to the FBI 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list on July 23, 1982. He evaded capture for 4 more years until his arrest in 1986. He was convicted in 1988 of the prison escape and several armed robberies. He received a 60-year sentence. He was released on compassionate grounds in December 2022 due to terminal bone marrow cancer. He died 7 months later in July 2023 at age 72. Marilyn Buck, Sylvia Beraldini, Seko Odinga, and Ronald Boyd Hill were also charged with assisting in Assata's escape. Buck and Mutulu were tried together in 1987 and convicted in 1988. After the escape, Assata lived underground. According to later court testimony, she stayed in Pittsburgh until August 1980. She then flew to the Bahamas. In 1984, she arrived in Cuba, where Fidel Castro granted her political asylum. Cuba paid approximately $13 a day toward her living expenses. $13 a day. That's what it cost Cuba to protect the woman America wanted more than almost anyone. Her daughter Kakuya came to live with her in 1985. In 1987, Assata's presence in Cuba became widely known when she agreed to be interviewed by Newsday. She published her autobiography that same year. She called Cuba one of the largest, most resistant, and most courageous maroon camps that has ever existed on the face of this planet. She called Fidel Castro a hero of the oppressed. She referred to herself as a 20th century escaped slave. She worked as an English language editor for Radio Havana, Cuba. She taught at Cuban universities. She wrote. She spoke. In 1998, she gave an interview to NBC. She said she had never killed anyone and was found guilty in an unfair trial by an all-white jury. She said she was shot with her arms in the air, then shot again in the back and left on the ground to die. Next thing she knew, people were coming by her and saying, "Is she dead yet? Is she dead yet?" She said she was later taken to a hospital where she was beaten and tortured by state troopers who would stick their hands in her wounds and ask if it hurt. The U.S. government demanded her extradition repeatedly. Cuba refused every time. In May 2005, on the 32nd anniversary of the Turnpike shootings, the FBI classified her as a domestic terrorist. They increased the reward for her capture to $1 million, the largest reward placed on an individual in the history of New Jersey. New Jersey State Police Superintendent Rick Fuentes said she is now 120 pounds of money. The bounty was later increased to $2 million. $1 million came from the FBI. $1 million came from the state of New Jersey. In May 2013, the FBI added Assata Shakur to its most wanted terrorists list. She became the first woman ever designated as such. The same list includes Taliban leaders and Hezbollah commanders. This happened 40 years after the crime she was convicted of. Fidel Castro said in a May 2005 television address that they wanted to portray her as a terrorist, something that was an injustice, a brutality, an infamous lie. Professor Alondra Nelson from Columbia University told NPR in 2013 that, based on her review of the case, it seems arguable that Shakur is guilty of the crimes they are charging her with. There is just no material evidence that suggests she was involved in this murder. Assata's influence extended far beyond prison walls and Cuban shores. She became Tupac Shakur's godmother through her friendship with his mother, Afeni Shakur, and his brother, Mutulu. Tupac referenced her repeatedly in his music. His entire thug life philosophy was rooted partly in his godmother's revolutionary legacy. In 2000, rapper Common released a song called A Song for Assata. The lyrics tell her story. Medical evidence showed she could not have shot the gun. The song brought her story to millions of young people who had never heard of COINTELPRO or the Black Liberation Army. In 2011, Common was invited to a White House poetry event during the Obama administration. The invitation drew outrage from conservatives and law enforcement groups who felt it was disrespectful to Werner Foerster's family and to police officers. Public Enemy was the first major hip-hop group to reference Assata in their music. Her phrase, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains," became a rallying cry for Black Lives Matter and a new generation of activists. After her escape, supporters hung posters in African American communities across the country declaring Assata Shakur is welcome here in response to FBI wanted posters. Between 1973 and her conviction in 1977, Assata Shakur faced 10 indictments, 7 trials, 3 acquittals, 3 dismissals, 1 mistrial, 1 conviction. The conviction came from an all-white jury in a county where 70% of people thought she was guilty before the trial started. It came despite no fingerprints on the weapons, despite no gunpowder residue, despite medical experts testifying her injuries proved her hands were raised, and despite a neurosurgeon saying it was anatomically impossible for her to have been in a firing position. Her case became emblematic of how the U.S. government treated Black revolutionaries during the COINTELPRO era. Documents released after a 1971 break-in at an FBI office proved the Bureau was conducting illegal surveillance, planting false evidence, and fabricating charges against activists. COINTELPRO officially ended in 1971, but the tactics continued. Cuba's decision to grant Assata asylum was one of the most famous examples of the island aligning itself with revolutionary forces, struggling against what it described as the oppressive capitalist empire to the north. Just as Cuba supported anti-colonial and left-wing movements in Africa, Central America, and South America, the Cuban government saw the armed Black liberation movement in the U.S. as part of a global revolutionary struggle. And here the irony becomes almost unbearable. While the U.S. government hunted Assata for decades, demanded her extradition, and labeled her a terrorist, that same government provided safe harbor to actual terrorists. Luis Posada Carriles and Orlando Bosch were both involved in the 1976 bombing of Cubana de Aviación Flight 455, which killed 73 people, including the entire Cuban national fencing team. Despite overwhelming evidence and Posada's own admissions in a 1998 New York Times interview, the U.S. government refused to extradite him to Cuba or Venezuela. He was arrested in the U.S. for illegal entry, but later released on a technicality. Orlando Bosch was arrested and briefly imprisoned for a bazooka attack on a Polish freighter in Miami. He was later allowed to return to the U.S. after lobbying from Cuban-American politicians. The Justice Department officially described him as a terrorist. President George H.W. Bush pardoned him anyway. So America protected men who bombed a civilian aircraft and killed 73 people. But they called Assata Shakur, a woman shot with her hands raised and convicted on zero physical evidence, a terrorist. They put a $2 million bounty on her head. The bounty failed. Cuba's $13 a day investment in one woman's asylum humiliated a superpower for 45 years. Assata Shakur died in Havana on September 25, 2025, from health conditions and advanced age. The Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced her death. Her daughter Kakuya confirmed it. She was 78 years old. She had lived as a free woman in Cuba for 41 years. She had been a fugitive for 45 years, longer than most life sentences. She was never recaptured. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parilla said simply, "We fulfilled our duty." Black Lives Matter Grassroots Inc. posted a tribute saying, "May her courage, wisdom, and deep abiding love permeate through every dimension and guide us. May our work be righteous and brave as we fight in her honor and memory." The Foerster family released a statement saying her death brought a measure of closure to a tragedy that has deeply affected our family and community. They said the pain of losing Werner is something we carry every single day. His absence is felt in every quiet moment, every family gathering, and every milestone he should have been here to witness. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy and State Police Superintendent Patrick Callahan said they would vigorously oppose any attempt to repatriate Assata's remains to the United States. Assata Shakur's story reveals the massive gap between how America sees itself and how it actually operates. The same government that claims to stand for justice convicted a woman with no physical evidence linking her to a crime. The same government that lectures the world about human rights subjected her to solitary confinement so brutal that international jurists called it one of the worst cases they'd ever seen. The same government that condemns terrorism harbored actual terrorists who killed 73 civilians, while it hunted a woman whose main crime was surviving and telling the truth about it. Her escape wasn't just about one woman's freedom. It exposed the incompetence and the cruelty of a system that desperately needed her silenced. When she walked out of that prison on November 2, 1979, she proved that revolutionary movements can't be imprisoned into submission. When she lived openly in Cuba for 4 decades, while the FBI's $2 million bounty failed to capture her, she proved that small nations with principles can protect people that empires want destroyed. And when she died free, after 45 years as America's most wanted, she proved that sometimes the one who got away wins. Her autobiography ends with the words that became the foundation of Black Lives Matter. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Assata Shakur lost her chains on November 2, 1979. America never got them back on her.